You are listening to Pharmacy, IT, and Me, your Informatics Pharmacist podcast. All right, welcome to another episode of Pharmacy, IT, and Me. And as with every episode, we start this one stating that the intended audience is everybody. And today we'll be speaking with our special guest, Dr. Denis Kitayama, on what his role is in the pharmacy technology and informatics world. So thank you so much for taking some time to be on the podcast, Denis. How are you doing today?
Great, Tony. And first of all, thank you for creating this podcast. I think it's a great service that you're providing to students and pharmacists interested in pharmacy informatics. And thank you for inviting me to participate.
Yeah, of course. Yeah, I actually started this because I remember when I was trying to get into informatics, I couldn't find any podcasts out there about it. So I kind of just want to provide that option for people to listen to. So for the listeners, can you tell us a little bit more about yourself? And I guess what was your path to getting into pharmacy informatics?
I'd like to take a moment to describe my current position first to define some of the terms. I lead the inpatient clinical content or clinical decision support team at Kaiser Permanente based in Southern California. And Tony, you gave an overview of CDS or clinical decision support in one of your earlier episodes. Just for a quick review, CDS tools enhance the clinical decision making for users of the electronic health record or EHR. Examples of CDS tools are alerts that pop up on screen, references to clinical guidelines or order sets, to name a few. Simply stated, order sets are diagnosis or procedure-specific groups of orders that make order entry into CPOE systems safer, evidence-based, and more efficient. As far as my background, I graduated from college at UC Irvine as a bioscience major, and I also took a coding/programming course, which is my introduction to computers. I attended pharmacy school at University of the Pacific, then residency at UCSF. Before coming to Kaiser Permanente, I was a hospital pharmacist for nearly 20 years, where I was a clinical pharmacy coordinator and director of pharmacy. I'd like to highlight some of my earlier experience that helped me the most in my CDS role. Like many of us who were in hospital pharmacy in the 1980s, I helped transition our inpatient pharmacy from a manual paper system to a computerized system. My hospital used Digimedics, which is a standalone pharmacy system, so there was no interfacing with physicians and nurses because they were still on paper. As a hospital pharmacist, I spent a lot of time verifying orders and also writing orders, such as adjusting aminoglycoside, vancomycin, anticoagulant doses, and managing PCAs and TPN. About 30 years ago, I helped develop pre-printed orders that physicians would use to write orders for common diagnoses such as acute MI or community-acquired pneumonia. The pre-printed orders in the paper world were the forerunners of order sets and CPOE systems. In fact, we use existing pre-printed orders as templates to develop some of the initial electronic order sets. I've created a few technology tools for inpatient pharmacists and for me as a pharmacy manager based on the database program FileMaker Pro. Examples included patient clinical monitoring and tracking and reporting pharmacist interventions, adverse drug reactions, drug information inquiries, and pharmacist productivity. As a pharmacy director, I had to assure that our pharmacy and our medical center were compliant with a vast number of regulations and standards governing medications, such as Joint Commission, Board of Pharmacy, and USP, and many others. All of these early pharmacy experience that I mentioned helped me a great deal when transforming from the paper system to the EHR and configuring CDS tools. Fast forwarding a few years, I joined Kaiser Permanente in 2001 as an internal consultant. In 2003, KP committed to using Epic as its EHR, and I was the first inpatient CDS pharmacist and helped with the development of the initial group of order sets. And besides order sets, I also work with alerts and other CDS tools.
Awesome. So the way that I kind of met you or know you is that we would take turns teaching at some of the pharmacy schools about pharmacy informatics for some of the earlier years of students in pharmacy school. So can you go a little bit into what you do from a teaching and mentoring perspective?
Sure, Tony. As you're aware, that I'm involved with the PGY2 Pharmacy Informatics Residency program at Kaiser Permanente. I've always enjoyed precepting, teaching, and mentoring students and residents. Started when I precepted an inpatient medicine rotation for several years at my practice site at the hospital. More recently, as you mentioned, I've been guest lecturing in pharmacy informatics at a few of the pharmacy schools in Southern California, focusing on CDS tools and medication safety in the EHR. I did mention the PGY2 Pharmacy Informatics Residency Program, where I'm one of the Residency Program coordinators. We started working on the Residency Program about 5 years ago, and we're ready to graduate our third resident, and our fourth is starting in July.
So right now, like one of the common questions I get from students or even pharmacists out there is that they really want to get into pharmacy informatics, and they're like, oh, how can I get into pharmacy informatics? And, since you have this residency program that's set up through Kaiser, what is kind of your take? Like, what is your advice to people who are trying to get into the field of pharmacy informatics?
Sure, that's a great question, Tony. And you had an episode dedicated to PGY2 Pharmacy Informatics Residency programs. When those of you were non-committal in recommending the PGY2 route versus going directly into working in a pharmacy informatics position. And I agree with you that PGY2 program is not for everybody. My own path is typical of a lot of people who do not do a PGY2 residency in pharmacy informatics. They get work experience first, then enter informatics. PGY2 residency does require a PGY1 residency first, which is very competitive. And there are only 25 PGY2 pharmacy informatics programs listed on ASHP's website, and a handful of combined PGY1, PGY2 programs in informatics. I believe that the advantage of a PGY2 program in pharmacy informatics is similar to residencies in general. Our resident rotates through several learning experiences such as outpatient and inpatient pharmacy informatics, CDS, data analytics, and others. The program exposes the resident to a wide variety of experiences that would not normally be received as quickly in a typical pharmacy informatics job. Our residents get EPIC certified, and we have been fortunate in that we were able to retain our first two residents, although we know that this will not always be possible in the future. However, our intent is to train our residents to work in positions inside or outside of our organization with the hope of becoming a future leader in the field.
So thank you for explaining that. Thank you for giving your take on that PGY2. I know it's a really kind of difficult thing to commit to, like for me, because I don't really know, like for me, like what you said, I went through a similar route as you, where I didn't go through a residency program, but I also see that value too. So thank you for explaining that to the listeners. I also noticed that aside from your current role, you also have some experience with outside consulting and some thoughts about starting a company. Do you want to expand a little bit on that?
Many residents and pharmacists pursuing pharmacy informatics position may wind up working for a consulting company. And someday you may even consider starting your own company in pharmacy informatics, either as a consulting business or a company trying to develop a new product or service. I was involved in 3 startup companies, and these were not solo efforts. I was always partnered with people that I enjoyed working with. The first startup company focused on drug information services, continuing education, and consulting services. And this was before the internet was mainstream and there was not much in the way of technology. The other 2 startup companies were technology-based. The major goal of the first technology-based company was to develop a CPOE system and have the system communicate wirelessly with a pharmacy computer system. This is before cellular technology was popularized, and that company went through changes in partnership and transformed to another technology-based company that I was a part of. And this new company focused on developing a CPOE system using an electronic writing or pen device. At the time, most physicians were still writing orders on paper, and we thought that the easiest way to transition physicians to CPOE was to create a portable electronic writing device to enter orders or prescriptions. Now, the devices were never produced, but we received a patent on some of the software features that are used in today's EHRs. The company eventually sold the patent and dissolved. None of the startup companies I was associated with turned out to be financial blockbusters, meaning I still had to keep my day job to pay bills. But the knowledge and experiences that I gained helped me both personally and professionally. All of the businesses made me think creatively and constantly about ways to improve workflows and patient care in the field that I practiced in. The experience also taught me a lot about the business side, from working with attorneys and accountants, collaborating with business partners, both internally and externally, and selling myself and my products. It's certainly a doable to start a new company by yourself or with others. I just know that it will be a major time and energy commitment to get it off the ground, whether or not you're doing it in addition to your regular job or if you have sufficient resources to jump in full time.
Wow. So it sounds like you had a lot of experience, like not just being in, the whole pathway of your career going into pharmacy informatics, like being at Kaiser, but you also had that experience with consulting and like being part of startups. So I guess from all your experience, what stands out to you as kind of your greatest achievement in the whole field of pharmacy informatics, like of what you were able to contribute?
I would say, Tony, my greatest accomplishment would be being a part of the team that developed the order sets for CPO go lives for Kaiser Permanente in Northern and Southern California. This was definitely the hardest project that I've ever had in my career. I say my proudest achievement, if I may mention that, is being part of a dedicated group that started the PGY2 Pharmacy Informatics Residency program at Kaiser Permanente, which led to ASHP accreditation and the graduation of 2 outstanding residents so far.
That's really cool. So if people if they have any questions about the residency program, or maybe just about your career path and specific questions about how you navigated to your career, what's the best way that they can reach you?
LinkedIn would be the best way to contact me.
Awesome. Okay. So I'll be putting your contact info through LinkedIn on the show notes for anyone who's interested. And to be respectful of your time, I'd also like to thank you again for taking some time out of your busy day to be on the show.
Thank you, Tony.
All right. If you guys like this episode, you guys can subscribe and rate us on iTunes, Stitcher, Google Play, or any of your other favorite podcasting services. You can also follow us on social media on Twitter or Facebook at Pharmacy ITME or Instagram at Pharmacy Informatics. And thank you again for listening, and I'll see you on the next episode of Pharmacy IT and Me. And remember, technology is a tool, patient care is the goal.